Hi, friends. Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. Recently, a subscriber offered her suggestion that maybe I've been using a little bit too much legalese recently. So I thought what I would do is whenever I'm using a term of art, a legal term of art that's central in a case, I'm going to define it. So today's case really has to do with fraud, and so I wanted to offer a quick explanation of what fraud is. So what does it mean when a lawyer says that something is fraudulent or it's a fraud? The elements of fraud are a representation, or in some cases where the defendant is under a duty to disclose something, it's an omission. It's material to the transaction. That statement is false, or the representation is false. It's made with knowledge of the falsity or utter disregard for the truth, sometimes referred to as conscious disregard for the truth. And it's made with the intention to mislead. The victim justifiably relies on it and suffers damages as a result. Those are the elements of fraud. Now, they vary from state to state, but that's generally the whole idea of fraud right there. I know this won't come as a surprise to anyone, but there are a lot of people who become lawyers specifically for the purpose of getting rich. And many of them do not become lawyers to get rich necessarily following the law or even practicing law. Sometimes people become lawyers basically to lie, cheat, steal, and essentially rip off the public. And it does happen. It happens a lot more than your local bar association would like you to know. I mentioned previously that I worked in a law firm many years ago that had a partner who stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from his clients, left the law firm on the hook, nearly put them into bankruptcy, caused their malpractice insurance rates to skyrocket, and I'm sure he never spent a single day in jail, even though he stole all this money. Never spent a single day in jail and probably never paid a dime of it back. And that just unfortunately happens. And a lot of it has to do with the connections that people like this make in the law and the people that they can leverage to get them good deals in a situation like that. So today we're going to look at a really interesting case out of Cincinnati, Ohio, or the Southern District of Ohio, I guess would be the better way to put it, because it tells an absolutely incredible story about a guy who was a lawyer, who got disbarred, and then continued to work as a lawyer. Many of the places that he worked were in the same locality. And then he went to Florida and California, where he also worked as a lawyer. And while he was eventually found out, he had, by the time he was arrested, become liable for $171,000 in restitution. So let's take a look at the U.S. Attorney's press release on this, and it has some pretty amazing facts in it. So here's the DOJ press release. It says, disbarred attorney pleads guilty to Social Security number fraud as part of a scheme to obtain jobs at law firms. Now, it's important to note here that he's not referring to getting jobs at a law firm as, a janitor, a file clerk, a private investigator, or something like that might be lawful. No, he wanted to practice law. And since he had lost his law license, it was going to be really difficult for him to do that as himself. So he just reinvented himself. It says a disbarred attorney who previously practiced law in the Cincinnati area admitted in U.S. District Court this afternoon that he used false identities to obtain employment with at least 7 law firms. 7 law firms? You're kidding me. 7 law firms could be bamboozled to pay this guy money, even if he was a disbarred lawyer? That doesn't make a lot of sense. This guy must have been some kind of exceptional con man. Richard Lewis Crosby III, 37, of Mason, Ohio, pleaded guilty to 3 counts of Social Security number fraud. His plea agreement includes a sentence recommendation of 37 months in prison. So 3 years and 1 month he will be in the federal slam. And that's probably not really long enough to protect the public, to be honest. But again, he's negotiated a really good deal for himself, because if they had prosecuted him to the fullest extent of the law and taken this to trial, he would probably have drawn somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 years for this. At various times throughout his scheme, Crosby used identifying information belonging to his elderly father, his girlfriend, a deceased man, and others. He falsely told at least one law firm that he was a University of Michigan football player and an ex-Marine. Well, that must have been to get back at Ohio State, because apparently he was really upset with Ohio for having disbarred him, so he adopted the University of Michigan as his alma mater. You just can't make this stuff up. According to court documents, the Cincinnati Bar Association filed a complaint against Crosby in November of 2020. In April of 2021, he indicated his intent to resign from the practice of law. So there's this process that you can go through if you get indicted, or you know that the jig is up. Basically, you are going to have to come clean. You can petition in some states for voluntary discipline, and in others you can voluntarily surrender your law license. Supreme Court's like that because it, to a certain extent, shows that you are accepting some accountability and that you're willing to suffer the punishment of losing a law license that you spent at least 3 years trying to get. So they often will accept a voluntary surrender in lieu of discipline, and that's what goes on to the record. And so if you later on get your act together and you go to another state and you decide, hey, I think what I'd really like to do is practice law again, it is possible to get your law license back. I've seen cases where a disbarred attorney in Tennessee was disbarred a total of 3 times. So there's at least 2 times that he was readmitted, which just really kind of boggles the mind when you think about it. It's like, when was he going to figure out that the bar was serious? In both June and November of 2021, Crosby was indicted and charged in Hamilton County with crimes related to stealing client funds. After his indictments, the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Ohio entered an order disbarring Crosby. In May of 2022, Crosby was arrested in both his Hamilton County cases. He was sentenced to probation in both cases in June of 2023. So much of what goes on here in this case related to Social Security fraud is going on at the same time that he's being sentenced to probation in his theft cases where he stole money from client funds. According to his federal plea agreement, while Crosby's local cases were pending, he created an email account using Richard C. Williams, Esquire. Crosby used the email address and the alias Richard Williams to communicate with a law firm in D.C. in 2021. The firm briefly employed this Williams guy. In June of 2022, at which point Crosby had been disbarred in Ohio and arrested on Hamilton County charges, Crosby used his alias to apply online for an attorney position with a law firm in California. Now, California has like a 3-day bar exam, and it takes a lot of effort to get a law license in California, even if you are clean as a whistle. But if you tell people that you have a license and they don't bother to check, you could theoretically be employed by a law firm in California, at least for a while. So the firm offered Crosby a position as an associate attorney with a salary of $150,000 a year. He was employed under the alias for about 3 months, so he's making more than $10,000 a month for 3 months, and he used a firm email address with his alias name. In September of 2022, Crosby used his alias to apply for a position with a law firm in Miami, Florida. And again, much like in California, in Miami, Florida, you would deal with the Florida bar, and the Florida bar is very much aware that people try to come there and practice law without dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, or passing the background check. So, in my opinion, this was kind of a dumb move. But, interestingly enough, it worked out pretty well for him, for a while anyway. Crosby met with a recruiter via Zoom and represented himself as Richard Williams, a licensed attorney admitted to the bar in New York and D.C. Crosby then met with one of the firm's hiring managers in Florida and was ultimately offered employment in October of 2022. His starting salary was $185,000 per year with a $5,000 signing bonus. He used his girlfriend's social security number, passport number, and banking information to complete his onboarding paperwork at the law firm. In April 2023, the firm received an inquiry from an investigator with the Claremont County Child Support Enforcement Office, making the firm aware of Crosby's true identity. He was subsequently fired after he's taken money and a sign-on bonus. In July of 2023, Crosby interviewed with the founding partner of a different California law firm. He also falsely claimed to work at the law firm of Kirkland and Ellis. Now, Kirkland and Ellis is a big law firm in Washington, D.C. In fact, let's take a look at its website. This is their website, and as you can see, it's a pretty well-done website, recognized by Time and Newsweek for workplace satisfaction. And if you go over here and look at more news, you find out that they are a pretty big deal. They are advising on all these different, on the acquisition of Augmetics and the evolution of AB, and 13 Kirkland Ellis attorneys recognized as advocates for justice by the ACLU, represents Kingswood Capital Management. I mean, this is a big deal, and it's a big firm. And of course, with a big firm, it's much easier to sneak in or pull down the name list and look at an attorney that you think might be someone you could claim to have worked for there without having any real possibility that somebody who's in a hurry to hire a position will actually go to all the trouble and check. So, in some instances, people actually do enough research that they find somebody who's on sabbatical so that can't be verified. At any rate, for whatever reason, he used Kirkland and Ellis because, again, it's a very big firm. Now, this is what I find interesting. After the founding partner asked Crosby to verify with whom he worked at Kirkland and Ellis, Crosby withdrew his interest in the job. A few days later, again using the alias, he doctored a screenshot of the Richard Coleman Williams in the online DC bar membership directory and attached it to his resume to apply with a law firm in Coral Gables, again going up against the Florida bar. The firm offered Crosby a starting salary of $195,000 a year with a $10,000 signing bonus, but eventually determined he was using a false identity and didn't hire him. So there are at least 2 law firms in this chain of disastrous actions that did do enough of a background check to figure out the guy wasn't who he said he was. In August of 2023, the defendant applied for a job at another law firm located in Michigan, and they sent him a letter offering him $145,000 and a $10,000 signing bonus. When his credential information had discrepancies, the firm terminated their working relationship before Crosby's first paycheck. In September 2023, 1 month prior to his arrest on federal charges, Crosby used a different alias to apply for a job at another law firm in California. He claimed that he was a University of Michigan football player and ex-Marine. He was hired as an attorney at a salary of $250,000 per year. So you see, this guy is just advancing up the food chain in terms of salaries. He's making money hand over fist when he is completely unqualified for these jobs. He used the Social Security number of a deceased man from North Carolina in filling out his tax paperwork for the law firm. Crosby was arrested by federal agents in October 2023, and as part of his plea, he has to pay back $171,000. So here is something that I find really interesting. The case was investigated by the Social Security Administration Office of OIG with the assistance from Hamilton County in Ohio, Claremont County in Ohio, the United States Diplomatic Security Service, and the United States Marshals Service. Now, you're probably wondering, since this didn't involve diplomats, how this could be. Well, many times when the Department of Justice needs investigative assets to go after something, they can use pretty much anybody who has been through FLETC, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and diplomatic security service people fit that narrative. And so they used all the resources they could get. And Assistant U.S. Attorney Timothy Landry, prosecuted the case, and this is sort of a big thank you to him. Now, they do a lot of these releases, and they're actually, you can find them on pretty much any U.S. Attorney website, criminal cases that they've brought. And basically what they try to do with this is convince the public that they are trying to keep you safe. And almost all of the FBI agents and other investigators do a really good job, and the U.S. attorneys do a pretty good job of protecting the public. The only thing I ever have a bone to pick with them is that they don't prosecute enough gun crimes. If you violate the laws, much like Hunter Biden did, you should go to jail. If you are not allowed to possess a weapon and you use it in a crime, you ought to do a hard 10 years in a federal prison. And there are ways that they can do that through the federal law, but many times, probably better than 90% of the time, they just don't do it. But again, that comes from the top, and that's been the case in both Democrat and Republican administrations, so it's not related to any particular ideology. Another reason that may be happening is, frankly, a lack of resources and a lack of prison space, because we do have an awful lot of people in prison in this country. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to comment, let me know what you think. Drop me an email and the email address up there. And if you have the opportunity today, do a kindness. Yesterday, I took my wife down to Dothan, Alabama for basically she met with her eye doctor. And on the way back, we were in a traffic jam in Dothan. And they're doing road destruction down there. I mean, they call it road construction, but of course they destroy everything before they get to that point. And a guy from FedEx was sitting there, and he'd been sitting there for a while, and I thought, that poor guy has got a schedule to keep. So I stopped, I honked at him, and I let him go in front of me. It's the little things that you do in life that sort of get you that little gold star and make the world a better place. So thank you again for being here. After you do a kindness for someone today, come on back tomorrow and join me down here at the beach. We'll talk about something else then. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.